Uh, well, thank you, Ankit, and welcome back. So, role of simulation is something that we are looking at. You may not go there in a very big way, but you can always take your OT attendees, your surgeons along, and have a simulation running because the equipments are going to be different. The OT is going to look different. You are going to look different. You will have a lot of equipments which you have not handled very seamlessly before. So it would be a nice idea to simulate it for a couple of times so that you all are on the same page. And remember, when you are doing all that and when you wear masks, it's very difficult to communicate with each other. So if you have simulated or practiced before, real time work would be rather easier, is what we think. This is just the way you could practice it. You can see it here especially. Yeah. And I've just bought you scenes from a few different operation theaters all over the world. Well, now that I have given you the essence of simulation, let's come to one of the most important procedures that we will not be able to say no to or avoid rather. They are the bronchoscopies, and they are all airway procedures in children. Today, if a foreign body bronchoscopy comes, we are not going to say no. We are going to go in our ORs and work. And remember, these are the most high risk procedures. I also wanted to note that the first case that happened actually was an ENT surgeon's death due to a contamination, or rather this particular disease, while taking care of children. This is a report that has come up, or suggestions that have come up, when a team of ENT specialists in children, anesthesiologists, and PICU have come together. So let's see what they have to say. They say that we should minimize the negative bronchoscopies. And how would you do that? Is do a low dose, non-contrast computerized tomographies, especially for suspected foreign bodies, and make it sure that there are foreign bodies so that they be taken in the theaters. But then we need to also be at least a bit positive about things such as children may not need general anesthesia then as such. But then the downside to it is always the smaller babies who are going to have foreign bodies in their chests, and hence you will have to give anesthesia there. So I mean, there are to and fro to everything that we read these days. Now with CT imaging, the positive side is less people. You will save on PPEs. The negative side is it's not that easy to clean CTs after having worked with them. When we come to ORs, because the unstable ones directly will come to ORs, so the procedure should be performed in a negative pressure zone. Full PPE including PAPRs are recommended. So full respect, level 3 grade of Association of Advancement of Medical Instrument, glove that cover the gown sleeves and shoe covers. All that is needed because this is a highly contagious procedure. In the operating room as such, limit the trainee participation, particularly because a lot of handling will be lesser. Limit the number of people. This has been said now and again. Video for trainee education. So maybe you can record and train your trainees because that onus still remains. And forced air warming blankets, which comes reflexly to pediatric anesthesiologist, is a no-no here because it is just going to increase the aerosols. But if we need blankets, we can't function without them. So let them be on the OT tables and have a liquid impermeable drape put on it. Now that the anesthesia has to begin, the thoughts given to this procedure are preoperative sedation, because we need calmer people and you need calmer kids to come up. So if their general condition lets us do it, we can actually pre-medicate them. We can line them and get them inside. Or even mask induction is recommended. Not that it isn't, but it has its ifs and buts. If at all we need to have a mask induction, the mask should be sealed well. It has to be low fresh gas flows. Aerosol and droplet barriers should be in place. We shall soon come to how they have to be designed. If positive pressure ventilation has to be given, which is going to be required sometime or the other, those who have done pediatric bronchoscopies would know it very well. low flow gas flows, small tidal volume, and low ventilatory pressures is what is required. Well-fitting supraglottic airway devices, yes, they are recommended, but well-fitting is the key here, or a cuffed endotracheal tube. So cuffed endotracheal tube does remain a gold standard, but well-fitting supraglottic airway devices is not a big no-no here. Poor sealed supraglottic airway devices is a big no-no, so better be sure of what you're using. Test them before and be sure about it. And a standard blade video laryngoscope is preferred simply because the distance is increased. Ankit has taken that into consideration, so I move ahead. Now, this is how a surgical tent containing droplets and aerosolized particles during unsecure airway procedure. This is how the tent can be done, but the tent has to be sealed properly along the bed or the table. So drape covering the bed, drape covering the patient's body, drape suspended over the patient's head, chest to create contained working space or tent. This is an example. In your work culture, do what suits you, but see to it that these principles are followed. And this is how actually you can simulate the tent once, so that there is no big confusion going on when the real child comes inside the operation theater. This is how the work will go. They are again simulating, if you see. So simulate and see what best works for you. Now, yes, drapes can be put. Yes, a CM cover can be put. Yes, any material can be put which actually serves your purpose, but then removing it is also an art. Otherwise, the whole exercise will be nullified. So tape shut the openings created, because you're going to create certain openings through which you're going to put your hands and work through. So the openings need to be shut, and seal it with an elastic band before we disperse. So in conclusion, for bronchoscopies in kids, sooner or later, remember these kids will come to us. Conclusion for even microlaryngoscopies is yes, go ahead, mask induction is possible. LMAs are possible, where you know what the ifs and buts are. Cuffed endotracheal tubes do remain the gold standard. So this is what it is. Now coming to role of focus, that's one of the most beautiful things that actually can just come to surface. There is a strong role of focus. There is no doubt about it, and the subject is very, very, very interesting, close to my heart. Now even yesterday, there were a lot of questions pouring in for the disinfections. I'm not going to go into details because the next speaker is going to look at it, but this is the site, and there are many other sites, by the way. There are sites given by many other companies as well. Go to them. They will give you the list which can be recommended, used. See what is available, and with your working place, if it's not available, make it available. Say Basilol, or say many other examples. Simple soap water. All this can be used. Probe covers, the sleeves, the laparoscopic camera covers, everything can be used. Cover the machine, first of all. So these are the guidelines here. You can visit these sites and be very sure of how to keep the machines clean. Well, coming to lung ultrasound as such, this is a huge plethora of information that can help you even understanding the baby who has come on your table and is absolutely asymptomatic. Let's see how. So reduce exposure to radiation is one of the beautiful advantages that lung ultrasound gives you. It provides reduces exposure rather, to COVID-19 for medical devices and providers. You don't have to take them anywhere here and there. The machine can go to them, at least from the first floor to the second. So, and child doesn't need to move from one place to another, spreading infection everywhere. So less risk of contamination and easier sterilization of the equipment rather than a CT or maybe an X-ray zone. Now, lung ultrasound in children is very, very well projected or made easy to understand in this particular article. It's a case series, as Ankit told you. These are all case series now, but this particular case series tells you very vividly about the role of ultrasound in children as such. Look what they have studied. It's a very short case series of 8 patients positive with COVID. They had 2 patients with severe disease, they had 2 patients with moderate disease, and they had 4 patients with very mild disease. And what all of them showed was a subpleural consolidation and the thickening and individual B lines or confluent B lines, and none of them here required actually mechanical ventilation. So when we meant severe, we really do not, we are not looking at ARDS or multi-organ failure here. Now this is the picture that they have shown us. It is again the pleural thickening here and the confluent B lines. These are the ribs and the shadows of the ribs, and in between the two shadows is the window showing you the lung as such. This is the consolidation lung. It is thick. There are no B lines which are artifacts actually, which is fluid in the lung, the interstitial fluid in the lung, which is seen, which has been shown. Look, this is not a dynamic scan. Once you go to a dynamic scan, it is going to say far more, which is coming in the subsequent slides. So this is what ultrasound in a child would look like who is COVID affected. So now let us see how it really goes hand in hand with other imagings. They are very much in concordance with the radiological findings as such. Lung ultrasound was repeated every alternate day by them to see that yes, it is in concordance with the radiological finding and clinical findings too. Before discharge, the findings were confirmed and again were in concordance with the radiological findings. So I think yes, we could let go of X-rays at least for the time being, or at least, you know, the basal and the last X-ray can be done, and in between it can really go all ultrasound ways even in children. Take an example of a real small baby. So this is the pleura here, and look at a good lung. We can see these A lines. These are normal A lines, normal. They are not vertical. They are absolutely horizontal. But if the same lung is consolidated, it will look thick like that. This could be even viscera by that, for that matter. This could be a CDH too. So now let's look at a dynamic scan to understand what it is like. This is the anterior, that's the posterior. This is a rib. This is a big shadow that we have, the shadow casted by the rib, and this is a big window through which we are going to see the lung. So this is the pleura. This is the pleura again. These are the A lines. Actually, there is some bit of normal lung left. Now let's see what happens. These are the nice B lines. Not nice actually, they seem nice, but they're not nice lines. They look like comets and they traverse the whole screen. The pleura is very, very hyperechoic. Okay. Now there are various zones in which lung needs to be seen, but in babies, use a linear probe and it covers almost half the chest. So two anterior and two posterior and two below the axilla windows, and you're going to get a lot of information. So the sliding is good, the movement is good. Come on the anterior aspect of the chest and you do not see the movement much. There are no B lines, neither there is any movement. The lung is consolidated and you can see the heart beating. So if I do this echo I do this lung ultrasound every day, I'm going to see some findings. And if this particular zone starts moving, this just means that something good is happening inside. If you now see what all information we have gathered that pleural movement can be very well seen. If you have put in your tube and you want to know whether you are actually really above the carina, if both the pleural movements are taken up, yes, you are. Suppose if one side doesn't move, especially the right side, and if the left side is moving, you know you're on the right side. So withdraw your tube a little. You really don't have to go with your stethoscope and go very close to the baby to auscultate. Your baby may be tented. So yes, there are roles, you just have to think of them. So coming to antrum as such, gastric antrum as such. Yes, we have various guidelines in pediatrics to follow for NBM, but then we might have relatives coming up with no much history, or we may have a relative who's one, because we're restricting them, a CLW child comes in, we do not know whether the child is really fasting, and antrum is seen very beautifully in children. See how big it is. I mean, it's not a very big, but we are using a linear probe. Otherwise, it would have been a curvy linear probe in an adult. And if the walls are collapsed, you know that you're safe to take up the patient. Now, focus will be useful in airway as well. Let's see how and in how many ways you can use it and what is the play and scope of this particular thing. Yes, a very obese adult, yes, a very slim, charming adult, or a very small baby, all airways are going to be scanned by just one probe, which is a high frequency linear probe, maybe a smaller footprint for real small babies. So still, in a small baby with a longer footprint, you're going to get a beautiful longitudinal scan where you will see all that you want to in just one scan without sliding much. So now let's see if I want to see this particular blue line. Right underneath, we are going to see the thyroid, we are going to see the cricoid, we are going to see the cricothyroid membrane and the tracheal rings as such in one longitudinal scan, that's all. So you will see the thyroid cartilage and then you will see the cricoid cartilage and then you would see the cricothyroid membrane out here, and this is the air mucosal interface, and these are the reverberations. All these are the reverberations artifacts. If we slide it a little more, or if we just pay attention to the distal part, this is the caudal, this is the cephalad, and this is the caudal end. So if we see here, there are many black shadows. So maybe you can very yes, you can imagine a black pearl necklace here. So these are all tracheal rings, which really show you what it is. If you'd have tubed the baby, then all these artifacts will disappear. Coming to transverse scan. Okay, transverse scan actually can be done right from the hyoid and we can go right down, but if I put too much of airway ultrasound here, I'll really skip my timing. So let us go right on the trachea. So this is the air mucosal interface, this is the tracheal cartilage, and this is the air in the trachea. And this is the esophagus. If you note, the esophagus is by the side. Even Amit would agree with me, or even he says so, that if this is on the side, then, well, how is the cricoid pressure helping us? Because it's on one side, you even sometimes see it on the right side or the left side, but you do not see posterior to it. So any which ways, I have my doubts about this. What happens in a tracheal intubation? If it was an esophageal intubation, if it was a tracheal intubation, the hyperechogenicity of air will disappear. If it is a esophageal intubation, you will see two tracheas. So please watch this dynamic scan very, very carefully. The tube is going to enter the esophagus now, which has been deliberately put to demonstrate a double tracheal sign for you. So these were the true tracheas as if they were to appear in front of you. Within a jiffy, you will understand where the tube is going. You do not need the ETCO2 to be connected. Neither have you really gotten hold of your stethoscope and gone towards the baby to see where you are. So the story is told to you very, very early. We will start doing our electives. We will get these cases. LMAs will not work. Fiber optics will work. But then if fiber optics were to work, you will have to sedate these babies. You have to mask them. Now so I'm not too sure where is the ideal situation and where is the practical situation and how to come in between them. But sooner or later, if not later, sooner, we will have to handle these cases and we will have to understand, even for a tracheostomy for him, if we want to go, we will have to hold a mask, mind you. So, I have to answer these questions to myself too. So let's wait and see what time proves us. Now, if this is a child in respiratory distress, look at the collapsing trachea. This is the artery here in the esophagus. So if you want to put a tracheostomy tube here, how would we have to hold something, we'll have to give some mask holding, we'll have to, it's, oh well, leaving to your imagination the difficulties we will face. I can sum up saying that there is still much that we need to learn about the impact of this virus on children, as well as the impact of children on this viral spread. And as pediatric anesthesiologist, long way to go to really strike that one balance between what is absolutely ideal and what is practical, and without compromising self-protection and protection of your OT personnel. So the path here is arduous, but I think I can really summarize it by showing you these 5 concepts. You stay safe, keep your team safe. Protocols and guidelines need to be in place and practiced. Training of personnel is important, and of course, patient care and safety. That remains our final goal. Having said this, I hope that we get a corona vaccine soon, so that a lot of these ifs and buts are ironed out and the mist is cleared. But then there is another aspect to it. Probably this is what is happening. So let's take life as it comes, and let's try our best to stick to what is ideal. Now we go to the echocardiography. Thank you.